Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Burn the Talking Points, your place for real, unfiltered conversations about the Maryland Democratic Party and Democrats writ large. This is a really exciting episode because we're finally diving into the conversations around how should Democrats be messaging, what are the lessons we can take away, and how do we win again in 2026. But before we jump in, make sure you smash that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're watching this or listening to this. Believe it or not, if you subscribe, you get notified of when we have a new episode, and it really helps spread the reach to make sure this message is reaching all across the state. So, with me today are three Democratic powerhouses who work across the nation, and we could not be more excited. First, we have Martha McKenna, who has done work for the DSCC, owns McKenna Media, has worked with Maryland candidates, including Sarah Elfreth and Brooke Learman, has worked for Emily's List, and the list goes on and on. We have Kevin Harris, who has done over 100 political campaigns, works with Apollo Messaging, and has a Maryland tie with the Baltimore City Mayor, which is exciting, and has worked with candidates across the spectrum, including being the former ED of the Congressional Black Caucus and Communications Director for Karen Bass. And we have Anna Greenberg, Senior Partner at GQR Research, 2014 Pollster of the Year, works with folks like Mark Kelly, Don Davis, John Hickenlooper, tons of senators, and I know the list goes on and on and on. So without going into everyone's resume for the next 25 minutes, I do want to start probably where none of us actually want to go back to, and that's 2024. So Burn the Talking Points was named and developed with a lesson that we took out of the election, which we think authenticity matters and real conversations matter. But I want to put it to you all first as folks who have looked at the data, who have looked at the campaigns, were in the trenches. What were the lessons that you took from 2024? And Anna, we'll start with you and we can work it down the line, and then folks just jump in when you have thoughts.
Wow, that's a really, really big question, and I actually think we're still trying to learn the lessons. So, for example, I think one of the things that became clear after the election is that the Democratic field plan and program might not have been all it was cracked up to be. And so as voter files get updated, one of the most important things we're doing now is going back and looking at who actually voted. We can connect it, I do polling, so we can connect it to our polling samples to say, did we get the right people in our survey sample? And it seems pretty clear that lower information, low propensity voters turned out more on the Trump side than the Harris side, and trying to understand that better. And I think as a party, one of the most important pieces of research we can do is to try to understand who were these 2020 Biden voters who did not come out in 2024. They weren't Republicans, they didn't like Trump, they weren't anti-trans, etc., but they didn't come out to vote. And I don't know that Harris would have won if they all had, but certainly it might have just come down to Pennsylvania, for example. So I think there's a lot of different lessons, but that for me is probably the most important and concrete one we can do right now.
And Kevin, what did you take away? And I'd also be curious, do you have a different takeaway from the presidential versus like congressional or state level races? Or is it the same lesson for both?
I think a lot of it is the same lesson for both. But I think particularly at the presidential level, this was my third race against Trump. And I think a couple things. One, we have to recognize that when it comes to Donald Trump, we sort of have this mindset that we can just wait him out, that once Trump's off the scene, everything will kind of go back to normal. And that's not true. The electorate has fundamentally changed, and Democrats have to catch up to that and realize that it's beyond just one man.
So I want to jump on that point just for a second, because this is something I'm hearing both sides of. Is like, is there a Trump after Trump, or is Trump unique? And like does Trumpism continue without Trump?
I think so. I think, honestly, it was here before Trump, and we started to see the fissures when you go back and really look at the data, and he just sort of became this inflection point. And I think one of the lessons from that is that, particularly when we look at minority voters and voters of color, where he did continue to make some gains there, we also have to recognize that economics trumps racism. It used to be that you could do some of the things that Donald Trump did, and it was a disqualifier. We just got to go out there and point out that he's racist, and then it'll be fine. No, we've had cycles now where we can see that, particularly in communities of color, where we've sort of lost some ground, where the economics trump racism. It's not that simple to just call out the racism and say that he's a bigot. If they think he's more credible on the economy, they'll vote for him despite thinking he's a racist.
Yeah. Martha, what were your takeaways from 2024?
Well, one that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and this podcast intersects with, is I think that we have to empower everybody to be communicating. So that from the top down, I think the candidates have to be available for Q&A all the time. I think that candidates need to have press conferences, talk to voters. Trump is very good at this. He's relaxed. Sometimes he makes mistakes. I'm sure sometimes he wishes he could take things back. But the truth of it is, he's always available. He's always talking. He's always communicating. And we are more formal with our candidates about when to take questions. And then you have the press secretary come in and say only one more. Like, we need to do more publicly available, more questions, more Q&A, be available more. I also think we should not have a big separation between the candidates and their campaign teams and our volunteers. I think our volunteers should come to our headquarters with their phones, making content, posting selfies, doing videos, even, Facebook posts just about having gone out and knocked doors. Like, we all need to be filling the void, and that is not something that the volunteers can rely on the candidates for. It's not something the candidates can rely on activists for. We all have to be doing it. And it just, every time I pick up my phone and Instagram feeds me some, white mom in her backyard with
Making mozzarella from scratch.
or not making mozzarella from scratch, but just talking about RFK and what he's doing. It's not sanctioned by anyone in the hierarchy of the party. It's just what has become cool and become part of the culture for Trumpers. And so I think that we have a lot of good ideas that are pent up, and a lot of people with creativity and energy, and I think we ought to unleash that so that we are just churning out content, communicating, and getting ourselves back into the culture, because we have completely separated ourselves from the day-to-day of the culture.
So I want to dive in, because I think that dovetails with this idea of what we're doing on social media or what we're not doing on social media. And maybe we all agree, I could be wrong, let me know if you disagree, but Twitter in particular, but social media in general is a cesspool. And it is really, there's a lot on there that is just this is hard to see 100 times a day. And as someone who looks at the Maryland Democratic Party social media and what people tweet at us, it's gross. And as someone who has managed a Twitter account for a female candidate, it's even grosser for what women are seeing on social media. But we can't abandon so what do we do? How do we do it in a way like the right's doing it, or can we?
Yeah. Look, I think there's two people I would point to right out of the gate. I think Sarah Elfreth has done such a good job. She's been in Congress for less than 2 months, but she's on Instagram Live talking about federal workers and what federal workers can do to protect themselves in this new time of firings. She is talking about Medicaid, explaining it. She has a series, Sarah Explains It All. So she and Sarah McBride, who represents Delaware, they did a little web series not dissimilar to this. Here's what Medicaid is, here's who's on it, here's what's gonna happen. I think that some of these younger, newer, fresher voices in the party should just keep going. They need to keep doing what they're doing. And then you see somebody, I sent you the clip yesterday, Kara Kuntz, who's from Howard County. She works for Pod Save America. She's doing clips that are going viral nationally. She's from Howard County. She's creative. She's edgy. She's taking clips that, this yesterday was about, a member of Congress in particular from California, but it applies to Andy Harris. It applies to many in targeted seats who have made a pledge to protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and are now reneging as they're voting on the budget. And so, I think we have little engines that could, right here in our state. We have young people with creativity and who are tapped into culture, some of whom are in elected office, some of whom who are not. And we just gotta let them go. We just gotta not worry about making mistakes. We just gotta try things and frankly have some fun with it.
Yeah, and I think what that says to me is we really just got to do a better job of just meeting people where they are, both in terms of the substance of what we're saying, but also physically, where are they actually getting content and receiving content. And I think sometimes as Democrats, we forget that Our job is to analyze the electorate, to understand it, not to judge it. And so we'll say, I don't like what this person is saying. I don't like that tweet. I don't like the things that they say, and we'll completely shut it down, and we will wall ourselves off from it, right? And you can't win campaigns that way. Our job is to analyze the electorate, understand where it is, and then figure out how do we get our win number. But too oftentimes as Democrats, we go into judging the electorate, right? And that's just not how you win races.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything, but I think that the non-political side is sort of where Trump has really, and the right has excelled. And so while I completely agree that, and I'm old, so I'm not a social media person, so no one should ask me how to do it, but that the kind of, continuous content generation by our young and interesting and funny leaders is really important. But it's the non-political spaces that they've infiltrated, and it's hard to infiltrate those places. Some of them are hostile places. They're, misogynistic bro podcasts, but in some cases, they're much more benign. My 15-year-old son listens to a podcast that is YouTubers who are reading ghost stories written on Reddit. It's very specific, popular. It's really painful to listen to, but he's a voter in a couple of years, right? And it's totally apolitical, but there's ads, right? And it's a lot of young men listening to it. The content is ghost stories. It's not misogynistic or racist, crap. It's just really bad writing. And so, I mean, I'm no expert again, but it seems to me that's where Trump and Trumpism has infected kind of the non-political spaces, the cultural spaces that people live in, and that's a place where I think Democrats are very challenged.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So when we go to the 30,000 foot, because what I'm hearing, I completely agree with around this idea of like more content is more content, and we need more content. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be polished. It doesn't need anyone's sign off. So
It's better that way.
yeah. So folks, make content,
Yes,
post
please.
content,
It's better
more
that way.
content. But we also know like repetition is key for main messages. Trump's flooding the zone, and there's a lot going on. As messaging gurus, like, what's like the top line that will resonate with, the 10% of voters we need to like come back to us and vote in the midterms? Like, yes, they'll see things on Twitter, they'll see things on TikTok, they'll have their own messages, but what should the collective Democratic, ecosystem? What are the things we should be repeating without end?
Well, so this is my little pet peeve, which is all of the podcasts and articles and commentary that Democrats suck and what are they doing. Not that you are asking that sort of question per se, but I do think that messaging is only as effective as it taps into people's lived experiences. And part of the reason why, Biden and sort of messaging around the economy during the Biden-Harris campaign was challenging is that it didn't really feel like a lived experience that this economy is good. And so part of what has to happen is people are going to have to experience the Trump economy, which is, in 5 weeks, we've seen consumer confidence go down. We've seen the stock market go down. We obviously have tariff happening in real time. And people are going to start feeling it, right? In fact, people are already starting to feel the cuts to federal jobs because, as we all know, they aren't just people in D.C., but they're park rangers and people who work in Social Security offices around the country. And so I'm not suggesting, a la James Carville, we just retreat. But what I'm suggesting is that our messaging has to tap into what people are actually feeling so it feels real. And I think where Democrats have been smart on messaging is to focus on the Medicaid cuts, is to focus on how this directly impacts the price of eggs, et cetera, and not get distracted by the flooding of the zone. Now, obviously, there's a lot more Democrats have to do. I do think that the Friday meeting in the White House was an inflection point. It seemed to, I think, rouse the base in a way that I haven't seen as much since the federal freeze.
And you're referring to the Zelensky getting kicked out of the White House?
Yeah, but again, like, all of this has to be around how you feel. So when the world sees Europe tell America, you suck, right, which is what's happening right now around Zelensky, let alone the tariffs, most people don't care that much about foreign policy, but there's it's almost unpatriotic, right? And so, again, I don't think there is a message that works yet. I don't think there's a unified message, but I think as Democrats, we constantly have to focus on the things that people are feeling and directly connect to what Trump is doing.
I agree. One of the main points you made as well was we also got to stop, don't swing at every pitch. Like, I think I agree with you. Our top line should be the economy, and it should be economic messaging. So even with Zelensky, yes, that is bad what he did from a foreign policy standpoint, but the way we should talk about it is he's so preoccupied with doing Putin's bidding that he's not protecting us from China. China is getting an economic advantage on us. They're getting an economic edge on us, right? That's what we should be saying. Always go back to that top line on the economy, or even with like the USAID cuts. Yes, there are children, and this is, I'm not saying this to minimize it, but there are children who will not get food because of those cuts that he tried to do. But the way to talk about it to Americans is that talk about the small businesses here that produce that stuff. Talk about the farmers who produce this stuff. Who produce this stuff, you know, and
Andy Harris's district, and he doesn't care.
Exactly. Like drive that messaging, but always go back to the economy.
Look, I think that our message is only as good as our action. And Democrats have to fight. We have to stand up. Even though we all know here, the four of us know, and everybody watching knows, we do not control the White House, the Senate, or the House. We have to take action. We have to show our fight. We have to show our persistence. We have to be ready to, like, really get into this and mix it up and hold, you know, Trump accountable, hold Republicans who won't have town halls accountable. We have to go at Republicans. We have had enough of calling into Democratic offices. The time to turn it on to these marginal Republicans in House seats they will not hold on to in 2026 if they vote for this budget. That's where we have to focus. We have to really make sure that our message connects with our action from our leaders, and then from our candidates who are running, and then our activists will feel like they can believe in it again. And I worry we had, to Anna's point, we've had all of these think pieces, we've had all of this discussion about our message. Well, where's our discussion about our action?
Right.
And if we are not walking the walk, voters will see right through it. And they will say, oh, the Democrats with their talk and their promises, but they never fight, they never get in there, and they never mix it up. And we have to, that is where I believe we have to show that we're willing to disrupt the system. We're willing to, you know, jam a stick in the wheels of the Republicans' effort at their definition of progress. And we have to back up our words with our actions. And that's where I get frustrated that we have too much navel gazing and not enough.
Well, but the navel gazing comes from people who don't work on campaigns, who get to say it in podcasts. But I actually see more of it than I think gets sort of reported on in a comprehensive way. There was not one vote lost on the anti-trans bill. Now, granted, you know, nobody really wants to talk about those issues, but the point is, both the House and Senate, not one, well, there was one vote in the House, no votes in the Senate, not one vote on the Republican budget. It was clear today in Politico that the House is not going to help the Republicans on the shutdown. If you look at the Democratic attorney generals, almost every lawsuit is brought by the Democratic attorney generals. So it is, I mean, I just think that there's actually more action happening, but it's the peanut gallery, I think.
Yeah.
Who, when I see, you know, an article that says, why aren't people on the streets? I'm like, why aren't you on the streets?
Right.
You know? So I don't know. I get a little aggravated by the idea that Democrats aren't doing anything.
No, Democrats are doing a lot. What we have to do is get the attention on it as if we were Republicans, right? We need our elected officials to be like live streaming, you know, their votes and their fights and their talk. Like part of this is on us, that we have to take action. We then need to make sure that everybody knows we're taking action. We need to get it to be part of the culture and the conversation. Like we have to sort of do it all and not worry about making mistakes and not worry about seeming cringy or whatever. We just have to go sort of make sure that we are, when we fight, and that we are being tough when we fight, and when we choose to fight, we're picking on fights that matter to the American people, to Kevin's point, and then we got to make sure everybody knows about it. And that's the piece of this that, like, it takes energy, but nowhere to go but up. Nowhere to go but up. So
true.
we should, you know, chug a Red Bull and go live stream ourselves on TikTok.
So let's talk bright spots then in Democratic messaging right now. Is there anyone that folks are seeing that you're like, yes, that person gets it, they're doing it, or like, you know, you're starting to see seeds of like, I think I see it coming together here? Or on the flip side, if you want to, is there anyone you're like, you really got to change? Like, this is not working.
Look, I think one of the best parts about the convention, the Kamala Harris's convention, was highlighting some new leaders. And somebody that my friends, I'm from Baltimore, and my friends from high school who are Democrats but who are not sort of overtly political, we were on a walk on Sunday, 3 of us, and one of my friends brought up Jasmine Crockett. And she was like, she is the leader. She should talk more. We need more Jasmine Crockett. And I do think, we all were introduced to her, the national stage at the convention, but man, she is funny and sharp and quick and fearless, and we need more of that.
I think it goes to like the don't be afraid to get out there either. Because like, again, cesspool that Twitter is. We all see when people make mistakes. Like, no one's perfect. There was a comment the other day that, like, not the most artful comment. She didn't care. She kept going. She got back on, and she went again. And I'm not talking about the one where she told Elon to F off. There's one about, like, taxes and things.
Yeah.
But, like, if you let that interview define you, and then you're like, I need to go back to talk to my comms director and really, like, get these, like, you're missing 15, 20 other shots that you can do. And, like, I worry that one bad interview is going to cause people to back off.
She communicates like a real person.
She does.
And that is why she's having such success in really sort of reaching people and breaking out in this moment. And even when you watch her in congressional hearings, right, her cadence, her approach to witnesses, there's an authenticity that's there. There's a boldness that's there. And I think people see a fight that's there, right? And, does it work in all mediums? But it reaches a key point or key part of the electorate that needs to be communicated with. Another person is that I like is Raphael Warnock. And I don't know if you've ever seen him give a sermon, but he gave a sermon like a few weeks back where basically he was just saying, I'm not going to let Republicans lecture me on caring about the poor or what the Bible says about the poor, right? And how many times do we sit around as Democrats and just talk about how insane that is, how much it annoys us, and who are they to lecture us? But he just said out loud what everybody says privately, right? And he said it in a smart and an authentic way. And we have to get back to communicating that, and we lost that. In 2024, I did a lot of work for Future Forward. There's a lot of stuff we can talk. There's process stuff there that contributed to it too, but like very difficult to get to authenticity, and we got to look at like our whole ecosystem, right? Of not just how we communicate, but also like the way in which our institutions work on the Democratic side and how decisions are made. But we do need to get to a point, like we were just saying earlier.
Are you alluding to it all, like lawyers stopping things too much?
Sure, that's a part of it.
Ad testing?
Yeah. I mean, that and being too, yes, that all of that I think is a part of it that needs to be looked at as well. Because like Martha was saying, we have all this great talent, but can they get past the gatekeepers?
Yeah, we need Republican lawyers.
Yeah, oh my God.
We need Republican lawyers.
That basically say, just do it and we'll work it out later.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we
just
had these
do it.
conversations where I think, do you think any Republicans on a campaign worrying about whether or not this thing you say you're going to do is actually supported by good policy that guarantees it's going to work, Right. Kamala Harris says, I'm going to give you $25,000 tax credit for a mortgage, blah, 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 blah. I can't remember. Yeah. Trump says, I'm going to deport people and give them your apartments. Yes. There's one that seems very easy and understandable, and one that seems like super complicated and not clear how it's going to help anybody. I would mention, by the way, Sherrod Brown has an effort around the dignity of work. What I like about that work is that it is a concrete, first of all, it identifies a key piece of how people sort of experience the economy, which is through their jobs, right? And which is not really how we as Democrats really talk about the economy. We talk about bringing down the price of insulin or capping out-of-pocket costs for seniors for drugs, but like it feels pretty remote, particularly because that doesn't actually affect that many people. But work affects everybody, right? And but it's a concrete, forward-looking way of starting to think about how Democrats can talk about the economy. So even if he's not Jasmine Crockett, I just feel like that kind of work is really, really valuable, and we need like 1,000 flowers to bloom. right, as we watch Trump tank our economy.
I like that. Oh, thought you were jumping in there, Martha.
No,
I
I'm
thought
going,
you heard Thousand
no.
Flowers Bloom, and you're like, I like that.
I do like it. I do like it. But I'm turning to you, Joe, for where we go next.
No, so I think I do want to shout out a few of our Maryland folks.
We
'cause
should.
this
We
is,
should. We've got some
like,
real talent.
Jamie Raskin is just,
Yeah.
I mean,
Jamie
across
Raskin.
the country is just, you go anywhere and people are like, Jamie Raskin, just doing it. Really great communicator. Obviously, our governor, Wes Moore, one of the most compelling speakers you'll see anywhere.
Yep.
And really liked what he said after meeting with Trump of just how, like, you go in giving someone a chance and let them show you who they are. And unfortunately, Trump has shown who he is and makes things a little more difficult. You know, I'm going to give Steny Hoyer a shout out. That man shows up for everyone at every time. Glenn Ivy's numbers on social are just
Great.
doing things, which was really impressive. Johnny O's got a really good effort showing how many days in a row Republicans refused to take a vote to lower prices. Sarah Elfreth was already mentioned. Obviously, Kwesi Mfume, get a microphone in front of that man, and it is artful. Just a lot of really impressive Marylanders, but when we talk about that national scale with Jasmine Crockett, with Raphael Warnock, with Sherrod Brown, like more.
And can I also just along that vein too is Mayor Scott, right?
Yeah.
The way he's dealt with DEI. Most Democrats they fumbled it. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to talk about it. They ultimately end up in this place of just sitting silent in the corner, right? And I think he's threaded that needle incredibly well, and actually turned it into a positive, into an asset. And he's communicated directly on it. He's active on social media about it. And I think he's actually shown a pathway forward for how to kind of get out of that box that we often get put in on issues like that. And so I would put him up there as well. He's gotten a lot of national attention for it as well.
Totally. He's done some impressive things. He's also really great with off-the-cuff moments, like during the pandemic when Shorty wouldn't pull his mask up, and he said, pull your mask up, Shorty, and it became a national meme. I want to talk about one final thing before we cover a break here, and that is a group of folks called Third Way put a conference together this last weekend to talk about how the Democratic Party moves forward. It's a centrist group. No shade on Third Way. Like, someone's got to put ideas forward to react to, and like some of their ideas made a ton of sense, and some of their ideas raised a lot of eyebrows. So I want to talk about some of the specific ideas fast. And I want to highlight one because I'm not sure where it came from or like why it was brought up. And maybe I'm missing something.
Is it the small dollar one?
It is.
Oh, it was like, where is this?
That was
what is this so
so-
wacky?
So let me read it for
Yes.
the audience so they know what we're talking about. They would
Yes.
love to hear a reaction. In their recommendation number 8 was move away from the dominance of small dollar donors
No.
whose preference may not align with the broader electorate.
Terrible.
Does anyone agree?
No.
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 I don't
No.
feel like small dollar donors have like an ideological bent
Yeah.
necessarily. They want to win. They get excited about candidates who they feel like have something to say and some fight. And so I thought it came totally out of
But also,
left
where's
field.
the money going to come from?
Right.
then?
Right.
It's insane. I mean, if
Yeah.
you look at frontline or red to blue races and the Republicans running in those races, and you would look at their money, very little of it comes from human beings. It comes from leadership PACs and corporate PACs, and then they've got their big donors. They have no small dollar. That is our strength.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? And it's not just our strength because it shows kind of the enthusiasm with our base, which there is not so much of on the Republican side, at least outside of Trump. But it's also, I don't want to call it a spigot because that sounds very transactional, but it can be turned on. And so you think about, for example, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed
Right.
and what happened in 2020 with that infusion of small dollar money. And so it is just insane. And I would just say that the notion that our party is captured by woke left activists and we can't break out is just, can I say a swear word? It's just bullshit. You know, the people waging the culture war are the Republicans. And so I just get really, my back goes up when I hear those kinds of arguments because we're accepting their narrative about us.
Yeah.
And one little point that I would add to that about why we shouldn't walk away from it is we talk all the time in a party about infrastructure, right? We got to get infrastructure. Those that is our infrastructure. Why would
Absolutely.
we gut it?
It's insane.
Yeah. No, I could not agree more. So I do want to say no hate to Third Way. Like, they put ideas out and
sure, we need
Sure.
ideas.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
get on the playing field and so people can debate your ideas.
Yeah.
That was just a bad idea. A lot of good ideas.
4 thumbs down from Burn the Talking Points.
So, folks, stick around. We are going to play a game when we get back about good tweet, bad tweet from our communications pros. So thanks for joining us for the conversation, and stick around. Welcome back. Thanks so much for sticking around. We are going to play a game with our Democratic messaging gurus here. It's called Good Tweet, Bad Tweet. So I have 7 tweets, and it is up to the panel to decide together whether this was a good tweet or a bad tweet. And then they have to rank them from best to worst, with 1 being the best, 7 being the worst. But here's the catch. They don't know what tweet is coming next, so we'll see what they end up ranking as number 1.
First, before we go, are any of them your tweets?
You'll find out.
Are any of them our tweets?
I'm not,
We're going to hold on to number 1.
I should have got all of your
Yes,
tweets in there.
yes, there you go.
I'm not the best tweeter. Maryland Democratic Party, great tweeters. Me,
Great tweeters.
not so great. So the first one is from our buddy, Senator Brian Schatz. It says, people like efficiency, but they are not stupid, and they know you don't just cancel a bunch of cancer research or lay off a bunch of veterans and call that savings. Good tweet, bad tweet. What do you guys think?
Good tweet.
Good tweet.
Yeah, it's a good tweet. Sounds like a person.
Yeah, I think he's one of our best messengers in
Yeah,
the Senate.
yeah.
Cancer research, veterans, good stuff.
Yep.
So 1 being the best, 7 being the worst. Where do you guys want to put that?
4.
3.
Oh, I was going to do a 2 or a 3. Maybe we'll do a 3 as a
Let's do a
compromise.
3.
I do a 3.
3.
A 3.
Kevin's a tough customer,
three.
so, you know.
Okay.
No, only say because I don't know what else is coming, so
I
that's why I'm
know.
reluctant
Hedge your bets.
to.
I'm
Yeah,
with
you.
so
So we'll do a
3
3.
is good.
All right, next tweet
Let's see.
from our buddy, Kathy Schleiger.
7!
A Maryland Republican. So she is critiquing the idea of executive orders, saying, Obama, if Congress won't act, he will do so through executive order. Read the Constitution. It's not a kingship in America. I mean, that seems like a really strong Republican. Oh, wait, that's 2013.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to guess if she's tweeted anything about Trump?
I assume
I'm,
not.
She
I'm
has not.
positive, but I mean, I'm seeing a typo.
Only 1?
Yeah, so I'm thinking I mean, I'm fine with the 7.
It's a 7.
It's
Oh,
a
no.
7,
I will
yeah.
not give Kathy Schleiger anything
Okay,
more
it's
than
7.
last place.
Like 9.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though she's taking on the executive, saying they're not a king, look at her. She's woke now.
Oh my
No,
God.
no, she's a 7.
Hard 7.
All right, Kathy Schleiger, 7. So we have 3 done and 7 done. Next one. AOC, and she is quote tweeting a video from Tom Homan, who called her, quote, the dumbest congresswoman ever elected. And this is what she said back. This is why you fight these cowards. The moment you stand up to them, they crumble. Homan has nothing. The Fourth Amendment is clear, and I am well within my duties to educate people of their rights. He can threaten me with jail. He can call me names all he wants. He's got nothing else. Good tweet, bad tweet.
I think it's a good tweet. Look, for today, the day that the NRCC told the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives to stop doing town halls, like, it's perfect. It is true. The moment you stand up to them, they crumble. They can't even have town halls in their own communities with their own constituents because they can't handle the heat. People are pissed about the cuts to Medicare, Medicaid. They're pissed about firing veterans and cutting cancer research to go back to shots. Like, she's so right. When you stand up to them, they crumble. And I think today is the perfect day to point it out because the House Republicans just this morning were instructed to no longer have in-person town halls because they can't handle the heat.
Well, my constructive criticism is that I don't know, and maybe the Twitterverse is different, if people know what the Fourth Amendment is. So
Fair
I just,
point.
as a comms, I'm not a comms professional, but I probably wouldn't write Fourth Amendment into a poll and assume that anybody knows what that is. So that is my constructive criticism.
I do love that she calls them cowards. Anyone
Yes.
that calls Republicans cowards, I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so good tweet. What are we ranking it? We've already done 3 and we've done 7.
I'm giving it I'd give it a 4.
I'm good with that.
4?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And can I make one point about the town halls just real quick? Yeah. We should find a way to go into their districts and do town halls if they want
Yeah,
to.
exactly. Field hearings.
100%. That's a great idea. Maryland Democratic Party, we're on it. We're going to figure it out.
Yep.
Next tweet. It is from the Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer. And this was February 1st after the tariffs came up. And there was a series of tweets, so I picked one. They're a little infamous. You're worried about tomato prices. Wait till Trump's Mexico tariffs raise your tomato prices. Good tweet, bad tweet.
I think it's good. I just would have picked something else other than tomatoes. Why didn't we say eggs?
So he did like a
did do
series of like 20.
He did.
Did he
yeah.
do all of the ingredients in guacamole?
He did.
Yes, because that is
It was around the
yes,
Super Bowl, yeah.
Got it. Got it.
happening here.
Got it.
I do
Yeah.
think. Look, I think the tariffs are going to raise prices on people and make a bad situation worse. And I love the fight of the Canadian people. I mean, they have been like at the hockey games. They've been speaking out. You know, in a way, Justin Trudeau's, you know, his party was on the ropes, and now they're coming back because they are fighting and standing up to the Americans in such a good way, in a positive way. And I don't know. There's something about this that, you know, you can't forget to have fun in all of this. And I think tomato.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
decent tweet.
I think it's kind of boring. I like the idea that it's all about guacamole, but in isolation, it feels like a fairly boring tweet.
So he got dragged pretty hard because this was also part of the do something moment where
Yeah.
folks
Yes.
didn't feel like anyone
Yeah.
was doing anything.
Yeah.
So I pulled this one because I thought it was emblematic of like the early fight. So we're saying it's a fine tweet. We're not on good or
fine.
bad.
It's completely fine.
It's fine.
All right, where are we
It'd
rating
be
it?
better
We
if
have
it like had hashtag guacamole or something on
something.
it.
There you
know,
go.
Something.
we
that-
have 1, 2, 4, 5, or 6 left.
I think Schatz needs to move up.
They don't get to move. You're stuck.
Oh, so we haven't done the best yet then.
Not
No.
yet.
Oh,
You haven't done 1 or
Lord.
2.
You're
Lord.
not done.
I mean,
with
is
it.
Chuck
I would
Schumer
make
1 or
this,
2?
So is 5 available?
5
Yeah.
is
I put
available.
this as
Okay.
5.
All right, so we have,
5 or 6, but yeah, 5.
so we have 1, 2, and 6 left.
Yikes. Oh no! Oh no!
Next one, Jasmine Crockett. So she quote tweeted a town hall, and she said, "quote This sums up my Republican colleagues. Constituent, why did you sponsor a voter suppression bill? Republican, I'll have to read it. ... I don't think it says that. Turns out it does say that. Good tweet, bad tweet.
Good tweet.
I think it's a good tweet.
It's a good tweet.
Good tweet.
Where are we ranking it? 1, 2,
Well, I
or
have a question
6?
though. Does the video relate to the voter
The
suppression?
video
bill?
does.
Okay,
It's
all
a
right,
constituent
okay,
saying,
okay.
You sponsored this bill, and actually explain the bill to the Republican, and the Republican went,
have to read
what? And
Oh my
it's the one about voter registration requiring your legal birth name
Got
on
it.
your
Got it,
birth
got it.
certificate, which
Yeah.
married women,
Yeah.
if they
Right.
change their name,
Right.
no longer can vote,
Yep.
Yeah.
which I'm not sure is a bug or a feature of Republican legislation.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I think I'd give it a 2.
I do too.
Too? All right.
You
Yep.
okay with that?
I'm
And Joe, we're
totally
hoping
okay
that you
with
have the #1 tweet in your hand, but
According to you guys, I do. Next one. The White House. Congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king, Donald Trump. This is the infamous declaring Trump a king tweet.
It has
Good
to be
tweet or bad tweet?
It has to be 6 because I'm not giving him 1.
it's 6.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got to be
He's
6.
gotta be
It should
6.
be
I'm not-
7, but we.
yeah,
Seven.
I ain't
but-
giving him 1.
Well, Kathy Schleich is
I
clearly
didn't think it was going to get worse than Kathy Schleicher, but it did.
All right, last tweet. The most infamous tweet of the last 40 days.
Oh my goodness.
Minority Leader
Don't make us do
Hakeem
this.
Jeffries.
Don't make us
well,
do
it
this,
has to
Joe.
be 1 because
Presidents come and go. Through it all, God is still on the throne.
Don't make us do this, Joe.
You don't have to do this one. We'll make it #1.
Pass. Can I phone a friend?
Well, the only one we have left is #1. So the infamous
Oh my
Hakeem
God.
Jeffries tweet. I will say the fight on Twitter from Hakeem Jeffries the last 35 days has really
Yeah.
been there.
Yeah.
You see, this is January 26th, 5
Yeah.
days after, and it was reassuring folks that there's things out there in control. It didn't land very well.
No.
I will say that.
No.
So I had to bring it up. It's the most infamous tweet of the last 45 days.
So it should have been shots, basically.
Shots at #1.
yeah.
Yes.
So what we have here is Hakeem Jeffries 1, Jasmine Crockett 2, Brian Schatz 3, AOC 4, Chuck Schumer 5, Donald Trump 6, and Kathy Schleicher 7.
It's mostly right.
Yeah,
Mostly right.
honestly, it feels pretty right here.
Yeah.
Thank you all for playing the game. Before we leave, I want each of you, you have 30 seconds to speak to the audience about what do you want them to know, keep in mind as they fight for the next year and a half. What's like the one thing you want to stick in their brain? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. So while our guests are thinking through their closing advice, remember, subscribe, hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're on. And also, if you're hearing this before March 8th, because it's coming out on Thursday, make sure you attend our weekend of action. We have events going on in all 24 counties, go to mddems.org/weekend, and you can join a rally at the NIH, a rally to save Medicaid. You can go to a volunteer information session. You can do a federal workers sign wave. You can do a march to Andy Harris's protest or fundraiser. There's things everywhere, so make sure you sign up. So 30 seconds. What do you want Democratic activists to take away and keep in their brain for the next year and a half as we fight? Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll go. I don't know that it'll take 30 seconds, but I think that, and it's following up to what you just said, is that all of us can do something. I think that it's sort of hard to believe that he's only been president for about 5 weeks. Is that right? 5 weeks, 6 weeks? And it feels so overwhelming, but we can all do something. You can go to Stowe, Vermont, and you can force the vice president into an undisclosed location when he decides to ski for the weekend with his kids right after he destroys our relationship with the Ukraine and democratic governments in Europe. And so I think that's even important for me to remember and for my kids to remember, even in Washington, D.C., is that there's still, we can all do something, and the more that we all do something, the more powerful we feel and less helpless, and it is additive. And if you think about the Women's March, we didn't have that this time, lots of reasons why, but the Women's March was not a top-down organized. It was bottom-up. It was somebody on a Facebook page decided to say, maybe we should get together and march. It ended up being the single biggest march in U.S. history, single-day march in U.S. history, because of all the marches around the world. And that didn't come from D.C. It didn't come from, Democratic strategists. It didn't come from consultants. It came from the bottom up. And I think the power of that can be recaptured. It just may happen differently this time.
Kevin?
So I would say something very, very similar to what you just said, because it was brilliant, as are most things that you say, really all things that you say. But I would just really echo that point and emphasize it as well, is that, remember, the politicians are always the last to respond, right? People are always first. People set the tones. And so we really have an opportunity to really keep these issues at the forefront. When Democrats don't control the White House or Congress, it's really going to be people out there doing the things, demonstrating, advocating, and marching, and keeping these issues at the forefront, so that we can turn that into the energy that we need it to be to take back some of these halls of power. And then Democrats have to remember, if they give you when they give you the power back, you got to do something. You got to do something. Be as ambitious and bold about our agenda as they are about theirs. And once people see us fighting for them, they'll show up. They'll reward you.
Martha?
All right. So I have two different ideas. One is run for office. Find Emerge Maryland. You can run for office if you're a man, and you have the right fight. The Maryland Democratic Party can help. There are resources for men and women who want to run. There are resources for young candidates. Look, just figure out a way. If you think you have something to contribute, run for office. In Maryland, we have lots of different state, county, local offices. We have the State Central Committee. We need new blood. We need new energy. If you, like me, stop short of running for office, go ahead and find somebody you believe in and volunteer for them, give money to them, door knock for them, give them your ideas on policy, and speak up and stay involved. The second piece of this is I want Democrats to get reconnected to culture. It's just too important. And I think even in a funny way, the Vermont experience was Vermont culture, but the signs were so good. It was like J.D. Vance puts his cast iron pan in the dishwasher, right? Maybe only a few people know what that means, but there is a culture of people that know, right? And he buys, fake maple syrup, or they sort of just figured out
skis and jeans.
That's a burn.
Skis and jeans.
Yeah,
they figured out Vermont culture ways of jabbing at him, which brings back some of the joy and the fun and sort of takes the sting out of it. But overall, I think Democrats are so divorced from culture right now. We have to get back into frankly, movies and music and the way people communicate, the words that people use, the ways that people have fun. We have to reconnect to culture and frankly allow new voices and new ideas to step forward and change the way that we communicate, because we can fall into some pretty tired traps. And so I love the tweet game because I love the tomatoes, I love the cancer research, I love the cowards, because we just have to keep going and keep getting out there. And I personally found a great deal of joy and humor in the people that spoke up about Vance skiing in Vermont and the way that they use some touchstones and important things in Vermont culture to, frankly, make fun of him. And that felt real and authentic and good-natured and serious all at the same time.
Yep.
That's awesome advice from all three of our panelists. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Burn the Talking Points podcast. Thank you to our guests, Anna Greenberg, Kevin Harris, Martha McKenna. Make sure you give them a follow on social media, show some love for this episode, and tune in next time. Thanks, everyone.